there's an insecurity in ministry and in pastors and leaders about their own capacity to hear from God.
Mm-hmm.
You don't believe really that you could go lock yourself in with God somewhere and really hear His voice and His instruction for your venue. You're not you're not convinced of that just yet, and it's because we've been immersed in decades of experts.
Right.
We believe there's experts that know more than I do. No, there are people that evidently found what God had for them and then did it. And if you find what God has for you and do it, you will also bear fruit that remains.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Refuge N.E.T podcast. I'm David. I'm the pastor of the West Campus of Refuge Church here in beautiful Jonesboro, Arkansas. Our Refuge N.E.T podcast episodes feature me as well as the lead pastor of Refuge Church and the pilot of our Refuge N.E.T, Pastor Matt Smith. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Pastor David. I'm wearing a sweatshirt because here we are. It is fall.
It is fall. Welcome to November at the time of this recording.
It is, yeah.
Absolutely. This year has just been so fast. I can't believe we've only got what is it now? It's November 3rd at the time of this, so we have 27 days left in November, and then 31 days left in December, and then 2026 is here, sir.
Yeah, it's amazing that we've come this far this quickly.
Absolutely. Overall, this year, sir, all thumbs up. God's been good this year.
He's been extremely good. We've had plenty of challenges, as we always do, but we've overcome all of them, and where we're going is even better than where we've been. So, yeah, I'd say 25 is a win.
I agree 100%, sir. Speaking of 2026, multiply 26, sir. What you got for us?
Man, I'm just excited about it. And now is the time when it is definitely got to be on your radar, got to be in your planning, got to be in your schedule. And because it's not, it's going to be the best one we've had for sure. Our evening speakers, as you probably remember, Aaron Crabb, Amanda Crabb, and then Jonathan Suber coming back to us again. And, great things going on in the daytime as well. And if you've been before, you've learned one of the great blessings and benefits is the connections between partners and building those relationships. And so you don't want to miss out on that. And I would encourage you to set aside the way and the time to bring team.
Yes.
If you're where you can at all, bring your team and get them involved in what goes on at Multiply. And the dates on that again are March
18th through 20th.
There we are, the 18th to the 20th. There it is.
I'm questioning myself now. Do I have that right?
No, that's correct.
That is correct.
It's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm excited about it. And as always, Net Partners, get on the Zoom calls. We want to see you. We've got a lot of awesome. We got 2 more Zoom calls left in this year at the time of this recording. And by the time you watch this episode, we would have had a November one. And I'm excited about the content for that. But then the December one will wrap up the year with that. But we want to hear your stories. Of course, you have my number, Pastor's number. And if you don't, you can get that from us. And we will definitely make sure that you are reached out to and connected as much as possible. As always with this podcast, like it, comment on it, subscribe to it, share it with your team, have them do the same. And anytime your episode comes around and you have a friend in the ministry that needs to hear that content, please share it with them. We want to spread. This is not an exclusive thing just to us. It's whoever in the kingdom of God needs this. We want them to have it.
Of course, yeah. If there's somebody in your world that you say, hey, this conversation would be good for somebody to hear, make sure, indeed, like you said, be sure and share it with them so that we can be helping as many folks as possible. Speaking of helping as many folks as possible, sir, today's episode, I think I've heard bits and pieces of this on other podcasts, but I'm really excited about the way we're going to take this. And that is, today we're talking about how you evaluate your church events. Yeah. I think a lot of pastors and leadership, they plan the event, they build the event, they promote the event takes place. But then do you ever sit down and really evaluate it? Do you ever sit down and really ask questions beyond what went wrong? Everybody can talk about that. Right. But can you really talk about, did we accomplish what the event was for? Did we invest correctly? Did things happen that we did not see coming that were actually blessings out of it that we can build on for next year? And before we get into all of those questions, sir, and more, I'm sure, let me ask you a question here right up front. Why even do events as a church? Why set aside things other than your routine Sunday schedule, Wednesday schedule, Bible study, prayer times? What is the advantage
of a church planning extra events on the calendar?
Well, I think that has to be answered. I think I've been a part of church long enough to know that a lot of times we have things on the calendar that we can't answer that question for.
Correct.
And the answer ends up being because we've always done it. And that is, you don't have enough time in your life for that. Like, you don't have enough time for those events. You don't have enough energy or money for those things to be there if you can't give that kind of an answer of, we know what the purpose and the intention behind this is. And so I think even asking the question is important. Why have an event? Well, why are you having an event? And for us, events are important for a couple of reasons. Connection to the community and outreach is important because it gives you an extra portal, an extra way to access people's lives that you might not have any other way into, and to let them into the church. And the church's life, and to let the church out into their lives. That's an important reason for an event. Another important reason for an event is if it builds community or builds your people and their relationships. Those tend to be the kinds of events that we do. Beyond that, we don't do just a whole lot. And so special times set aside. For instance, in our church, we're about to have at all three of our campuses do a Thanksgiving meal together, where each campus gathers for a meal that is, there's not really a program. It is really just a fellowship meal. Now, one of the reasons that we do that once a year is because we do not have lots of potlucks and lots of those things happening all the time. Your church culture is a little different because you do have a weekly meal, but that is intentional. That is planned. That is part of the program.
Correct.
But we intentionally plan that because it becomes it has become a very big event, like our Thanksgiving, especially at my campus. It is a very important thing that people never want to miss. And because it's such a relational time that they invest into the community of the church and the heartbeat of the church. And so, having these occasional things, having these things that are not the every week norm, sometimes it gives your people something to be excited about when they need to be. It also gives some people opportunities to serve that don't serve in other ways.
Correct.
And it gives you just an addendum, an added time, an added way to relate to one another, to make an enriched church experience. But we do not make extra events for the sake of having events. Calendars are already plenty full, and we've all lived 80s and 90s church quite enough. We don't fill up the calendars for no reason.
No, 100%, sir. And I think a lot of it was the idle hands or the devil's playground, that if I keep my church busy, then maybe they don't have time to do a lot of the whole downtime thing. But as we've talked on this program and on this podcast, sir, there also is an intentional thing about rest. There's an intentional thing about your people need to have time to enjoy family, to enjoy their weekly time, to reflect on the service that just happened, process it before the next one comes around. But there are times in the year where you just look at the calendar and there's a space there, and you just think to yourself, maybe something needs to go here that would be galvanizing for my people, or would be a good time to motivate for within the community. So before we get to the actual evaluation on the back end, sir, which is I know the majority of the meat of this conversation, when you look at your annual calendar, Multiply Conference aside, we know why we do that. And if you don't, welcome to the net. You'll learn more about it as we go. But when you look at your calendar, sir, do you see things in seasons? Do you see things in, well, of course, this time of the year, a lot of people are in this way of thinking, so an event like that would make sense there. Of course, because a lot of pastors, maybe they do think practically with events as opposed to spiritually with events. So when you look at a calendar and you're putting events on the calendar, as we do every year at Staff Retreat, how do you kind of view where an event needs to be and why it needs to be there?
Yeah, I have to balance that because it's easy to get into the routine of practically looking at a thing and saying, okay, this needs to be here, this needs to be there. Obviously, this time of year we should do this, we shouldn't do that. And I don't live that way. I'm much more geared towards the spiritual, so I like to know in my heart from prayer things that God wants us doing. And then often from that, you get a direction of, I believe it needs to be this time of the, but if not, if it's just a thing that you know needs to be part of what you're doing, then the practical comes in. You look at the calendar and say, okay, since I don't have a specific direction of when, then I'm going to look at when makes the most sense as far as a wisdom. There's either the direction of God or there's wisdom. Outside of those two things, you don't need to be making decisions.
100%.
And so if you have a specific, okay, I know a thing that God wants us to do, and I know a timing to do it, then obviously that's made clear. But sometimes you just know there's elements that need to be part of what's going on. And then you go to the practical and say, okay, when does it make sense to fit this?
I agree. That's exactly what I do. When it comes to taking the event itself, let's take probably the big three that every church thinks about. They think about the resurrection weekend. They think about something big maybe in the summertime, and they think about something around Christmas. Those are probably the three safest times of the year that probably churches are thinking about. So when it comes to an event, sir, in order to properly have an evaluation of it, how much allotment of your time do you think needs to be given to an event? Let's say an event that impacts the whole church, because we know sub ministries also have their own little things they do. But when it comes to an all-wide major church event that the whole church campus knows about it, if you have multiple campuses, they all know about it. This is something we're doing together as a church, such as a Multiply conference. In order to properly evaluate it and work on it and give it the best amount of investment you can, so that it goes off and you're stewarding it as properly as you can, with what God's given you to do and the resources God's given you to do it. How far back, sir, honestly, do you feel is a healthy way to think about when it's coming in the future? When would you start the planning process for it?
Well, it depends on how intense the thing is. For us, Multiply Conference is intense. Obviously, Night to Shine is intense.
Yes, sir.
Those things are so involved with so many tiers, so many layers, so many volunteers, so many aspects that you want months. You always want months. I feel like that Multiply Conference needs a good, really 6 months would be preferable, but 4 to 5 definitely.
Right.
Night to Shine planning is 4 or 5. Like I said, it depends a lot on the intensity. But if you've got a lot of moving parts, you need to be at that half-year mark or 4 or 5 months at least.
I would agree with that, sir. When you put an event on the calendar, talk to me about the difference of something we need to be doing versus the mission behind the event. Because I think a lot of times when we plan an event, as a pastor, I sometimes have been guilty in the past of, well, it's that time of year. Of course, we should do something. Or when you're thinking about, I don't want my team to just get caught up in routine. I need to give them something to break it up. I need to give them something to look forward to plan forward to. Okay, well, if it's team building, then is it something the whole church needs to be involved in? And so kind of go back to, because all this goes into the evaluation, because when you start evaluating, you start asking the questions, did it accomplish that? Did it do what you wanted it to do? So when you look at an event, sir, in that lens and in that frame, can you talk to me just really quickly about when an event gets placed on the calendar, what are some key elements that on the back end you're going to ask questions about, or you're going to think about, this is the reason we put it on the calendar, so when it's over and we sit down and talk about it, we need to look at these 3 or 4 things to make sure this was what we wanted it to be?
Yeah, you're going to obviously examine your purpose, and from the beginning that the reason that we have the whole thing is to end up at this end with these results, and whether it is the gospel preached to a certain group of people, or it is a unifying event for your church family, or whatever, team building for your team, whatever it is. Obviously the biggest thing that you're going to examine is, did we do the thing we set out to do, which means from the beginning, you want a clear vision statement for the thing. And then the other thing is going to be, did we, how well was it executed? Was there, was it done with excellence? Was it efficient, both time Was it efficient with people?
Mm.
For instance, I'm gonna want to know at the end of these big things, is my team wore out?
Right.
Did it cause more casualties than it fixed?
Mm-hmm.
You know, was it efficient? Was it efficient financially? Did we walk through it thinking one budget, and by the time we got to the end, we realized, no, it takes way more money to do that? Or we came in way under budget and we can dream bigger.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that you're going to evaluate. So you know that from the beginning. And what is the residual effect on your church? Besides, did we accomplish the thing? Are we better?
Yes.
Because we did this? Or did, hey, this accomplished something great once, we'd be better not to do this again? Because I've had those.
Yeah.
Where, it accomplished the thing, and then we ended up, this is really not for us.
Right.
So we learned from that and we moved on.
So you're tailoring something, sir, which is, I think something that I think a lot of pastors need to pray and think about when they plan their events. Does it make sense for our church to do this?
Absolutely.
I think that's, because we've said this numerous times, comparison is the thief of joy. Well, so-and-so down the street, they're going to do something like this, so maybe we should too. Should you? Or it's this time of year, so obviously we need this. Do you need that? Or do you need something different to you? And so, sir, talk about when it comes to, because we had an episode about identity and being solid in who God says you are. And for Refuge to look around the world and go, well, what are all these churches doing? To then come back and go, well, how can we do that the Refuge way? You're still doing just an artificial version of something that was the dream of somebody else, right, or was in the heart of somebody else. So, sir, when you're prayerfully thinking about the Refuge congregation, and you're thinking about, for us, it's the city of Jonesboro and the city of Marktree, when we're praying for our community and praying about what does our church need and what does our community need, tell me how out of the DNA and the heart of God for our church and the heart of God for our cities, how does all of a sudden these things start surfacing? How do you begin to tangibly go, I think there's an event boiling here. There's something coming up in my spirit, and I need to start putting legs to this thing. How does that begin manifesting in your prayer time?
First of all, if you're the leader, don't discount what comes to you as ideas. Don't second guess you by looking to others and thinking, okay, well, nobody really does what I'm thinking, so maybe this is not a thing. Or everybody's doing this, I don't need to. Like, you have to have enough enough self-awareness and self-value in the place where God has put you to trust the things that come into your spirit and take them seriously. And the longer you've been in a place, at a church, in a community, the more connected you are to it, the more connected you are and in sync with what is needed there, then you become more intuitive about, this is a thing for here, or this is not a thing for here. And you need to trust yourself if you're the leader. If you've just been in a place a short time, you might not trust yourself as much until you've got your feet really on the ground to know the place or to know the people better. But once you do, you need to trust what is instinctively coming to you as this is a need or this is not a need, regardless of what somebody else is doing or not doing. Now, I'm going to address a thing. Because we have all, over the last however many decades, read a lot of leadership books, a lot of pastoral leadership books, a lot of church growth books, maybe, and all these things. And let me tell you what that did for me. Maybe nobody else has struggled with this. But what you do is you read this man's book about what he does for evangelism. And then you read this man's book about what he's doing for discipleship. And then you read this book about community and fellowship within your church. And then you read this book about outreach. And what happens is you read so many leadership books, you have so many people you follow on social media, and all of them are immensely excited about their thing,
right?
Because it is their thing.
Correct.
But we as recipients and eaters, partakers of all of those things, you start thinking, man, I got to be doing this, and I should be doing, if I'm healthy, I would be doing this, and if I'm good, I would be doing that, and if I care about the lost, I'm doing that. And you're basically becoming this partaker. You're walking into the 50-foot buffet and feeling like you have to gorge on everything to be healthy.
Right.
And that is wrong. wrong. You will be unhealthy if you gorge on everything. But that is because of leadership material culture that's out there, that we read things and think we have to adapt everything that we've read if we want to be good at this, if I want to be caring about that, if this is important to me. Well, I've read about all, and everybody makes their thing sound like it's the thing.
Right.
So then you feel like you have to be giving 100% to this and 100% to that and 100% to this just to be an appropriate pastor or leader. And I ran a youth ministry that way. And so we did 100% evangelism strategy, 100% discipleship strategy, 100% leadership development strategy, 100% prayer strategy. And my kids were doing stuff. It's amazing I had a youth ministry for all the stuff we were doing.
Right.
But I felt like I had to do all of it at 100% or we were not doing what God wanted us to do. And a lot of that was because of peer pressure from the leadership culture that makes you feel like you got to do that. Scrap it all and go to the prayer closet.
Yes, sir.
Because the Holy Spirit will enable you. And then when you start zeroing in on the God's direction for your ministry, now you might want to go find somebody that has expertise and understanding in it and see what you can learn. But then you're going to run even that, of course, through your filter of what God's calling you. But it all needs to go back to the prayer closet. It all needs to be you trusting you as the leader to hear from God about your area, your church, and your community. And then as you want to bring in people who know more than you do, of course, absolutely, you learn from that. But I would say that's one way to scale back this overwhelming need to, I got to do 100% of this and that. And be careful with that because then you'll be going 100 directions and you'll be a jack of all trades and a master of none.
Yep.
And your church will look like that, sound like that. You won't excel at doing anything really well.
It's so true, sir. I mean, and I know we're mainly talking about events today and we'll get back to that in a second, but I think out of the DNA and the culture you create, your events come. And so when you look at the culture you create, I love the heart of some of my heroes in ministry, but I had to laugh when I was in Indiana for a couple of years. I had to laugh every time I would go to the host church of the district councils, and we would walk in, and they had the same 4 core values as a church down in Alabama, because that church in Alabama had hit on something that for them it worked. And they fine-tuned it. They prayed it through. They tweaked it as they went. It took them 20 years to get to this place where this is who we are. We own it. It works for us. This is our process. This is how we mold and shape disciples and reproduce our sons and our daughters who step in. And when we have a ministry position, we don't have to look for the outside. They're coming right up through the pipeline. We know who they are. We can put them right in. And everybody would watch this and see the way it would work and the way it would produce and the souls that were being won on a weekly basis for the kingdom. And the whole nation awoke and said, well, they're doing something right. We got to jump on what they're doing, instead of asking the question, how did you pray to find these things?
Yes.
What was your worship culture? What questions did you ask yourself? What questions did you ask God about your city, about your state, about your region? What was it that God opened your eyes to? And this is the direction you should have been looking at or should have been praying. And I feel like I don't think it's laziness, sir. I think it's just we want so badly that what we do matters. And what we do is effective for the kingdom. We don't want to waste people's time. We don't want to waste God's time. We don't want to waste God's resources. We don't want to waste our lives in ministry. We want to make an impact. We want to make an impact now. And so a lot of times we go, well, what soil is producing? Whatever that is, I want to sow that same seed in that same kind of ground.
This over here is proven.
Yes.
So we'll go with what's been proven.
Correct.
And I'll tell you another thing that feeds that is, and I think it's a huge problem, is there's an insecurity in ministry and in pastors and leaders about their own capacity to hear from God. You don't believe really that you could go lock yourself in with God somewhere and really hear His voice and His instruction for your venue. You're not convinced of that just yet. And it's because we've been immersed in decades of experts.
Right.
We believe there's experts that know more than I do. No, there are people that evidently found what God had for them and then did it. And if you find what God has for you and do it, you will also bear fruit that remains.
Absolutely. And it's so funny, sir, when people invite them to their church or go to see them at a conference, you'll never hear them say, if you do this in your church, it works. They don't say that.
No, that's never said.
No, they always say, this is what God showed me.
Yes.
This is what I did for my community. Take from this what you feel like will work for you, but you've got to seek God for yourself. And it's funny how it's like we hear that, but we don't let it get from here to here.
No.
We don't let it get to that place. And
we feel like they know what to do and I don't, so
exactly.
I will do what they did.
Exactly. So when it comes to events, sir, when you get an idea, okay, I'm comfortable and secure in who I am. This is the role God's placed me in. This is the anointing on my life. This is my calling, my mission, my vision for my church, and my heart for this city. This is what God wants me to do. So the event comes up on the calendar. You begin planning it. You begin preparing for it. Along the way of the journey of the planning, what are some things you're looking for in terms of, okay, this is a good question. How are you evaluating the prepared process, maybe to the point of, before we get to the point of no return, I think you know where I'm going with this. There's got to be a point in your planning process where, like, wait, hold on a second. We were impulsive about this. We didn't think this through, or you know what? This is the DNA of our house, but this is not the right timing for this. Is not. What are there any things you're asking yourself, or any markers you're looking at for the moment to hit the brakes?
Well, I think that's one reason that you want to give yourself plenty of time.
Yes, sir.
For one thing, so that you have that chance, and then you're just looking at, for me, is this coming together?
Mm-hmm.
Have we found the groove of people are finding their place in it, and we are and then there's the other thing: are we progressing, or do we keep hitting brick walls?
Right.
That doesn't mean that you're not in the right vein, because sometimes brick walls are just attacks that you need to plow through. But is it not just that? Is it that we have, the organization's not coming together? People are not feeling passionate about this. This is, are elements just not clicking in a way that, we need to reevaluate? That would be the biggest warning sign for me.
Agreed. Has God ever given you an event and you were so sure about it, but you had to wait for the right timing to unleash it?
Absolutely. And you have to be careful not jump the gun. When you have something in your heart, it doesn't mean do it tomorrow. It may mean you have it in your heart now, because it's going to take a while to germinate and grow and develop, and you have to know about it now. Mm-hmm. God will give you sometimes a vision for down the road, because you need to know it now to start down the road, to be prepared for it at a point later, and not to just jump the gun tomorrow because I felt a conviction. Does that conviction come with a timeline? Well, if it doesn't, then you need to put it out there as far as like, all right, God, you're going to do what it takes to develop us, to get us to the point where we can do this thing.
I agree. There's been several times I have an idea for something, but I'll look around at the team I have at the moment. I'll be like, they can't handle this yet.
Right.
This is way bigger than us 6 or 7 people could pull off. And even there's things in my brain, sir, and I know there's things in your brain that God has spoken to us and shown us, that even looking at our current state as Refuge, we'd be like, we're not there yet.
Right. Of course.
We're going to get there. God's going to get us there, because that's part of the plan. It's part of the vision. But right now, if we put, and that's something else, when you're evaluating the event and evaluating how it's going, like you said, the fatigue of the people, is this crushing them more than it's cultivating them? Right. Is it too heavy for this season? But at the same time, is that also an indicator of, have I prepared them enough to handle this? Have I pastored them in the right way to take on the responsibility of this? And so many times I think we have this great idea and we want to see it happen, and we don't think, and we think maybe too much about the end of it before we think about the process of it. Like, I see the event. It goes off. It's powerful. So many people get saved. Great. Here, we're going to do it. But that's hours of this. That's this. So when you're how much do you have to count the cost before you even decide to announce it?
I'm a huge cost counter. I'm extremely, in every possible way, I'm extremely like textbook conservative. So I am thinking through what this is going to mean if we make this decision. What is it going to mean financially, people-wise, time-wise? Like, I have thought all of that through before I ever even if I bring something to the team just to bat around or think about, I have already thought through those things, or I'm not going to put it out there to anybody.
Wow.
Because I don't want them grabbing onto and getting excited about something that we talk through for 30 minutes and realizing I'm probably going to have to pull the plug on that idea. I already want to have thought through the cost counting before I even let anybody know, usually.
So before we get to the back half of this and actually the evaluation process that we do when event's over, let me ask you this question, sir. What if you know God's given you an event? You've counted the cost of it. You know it's for this season, but you got it. But you then present it, and there's kind of from your team, like they don't see it. Like maybe halfway through the process, they start seeing it, and then the night of, oh, I definitely see it now. But in the initial stages, has God ever given you a vision for an event, and nobody in the room gets it but you, and you just know God's told me we got to do this?
Not so much an event, but a piece of our vision many years ago that happened with, and there were some leaders in the room that were not ready for that. Now the church we needed to embark on this now, but there were some people present that weren't there, and truth be told, they never saw it.
Wow.
And part of it was they were scared of it, or it intimidated them in some way. And so, but it was big enough that, and the thing was, I didn't anticipate that. I didn't see it happening like that. I didn't think that's what was going to happen. I thought I would have 100% buy-in from the beginning. And I didn't. But it was such a major piece of what we were doing. There were no choices. It had to be done. An event is not as much like that, because you could postpone and try an event later,
right,
when you get 100% buy-in if you need to. But yeah, I've had that situation, and you just kind of have to know as the leader, is this a time to push it or is it not? Like they need to grow. They'll need to grow into this. They'll figure it out as they go, and so, sometimes that is the case of you do know better because you are the leader.
Yes, sir.
And you have to say, you know what, I'm going to push for this, and because it's not a democracy, and no, we're going to do this, and you're going to grow through it. If you know as the leader you're going to do it and it's going to crush people, don't do it yet.
Right.
If you know it's going to be hard, but they're going to grow through this, that's a completely different thing.
Yes, sir.
Because sometimes you're going to have to do those things to challenge other people to go places they wouldn't go on their own.
100%. Yeah. I've been in several sessions where the pastors will say, like, until I get a unanimous vote on this, we can't do it. What if you've heard from the Lord and you need to do this? There's got to come a point where, do they trust you to be the pastor or not? And that's a whole nother podcast episode, sir. But if your church can't see you as their pastor, then that's going to be a hard uphill battle for you to fight.
It is. It is.
Yeah. So we've done all of that. We've prayed it through. We've processed it. We've counted the cost. We've launched it. We've prepared it. We've built up to it. You've promoted it. You've executed it. It's done. Let me ask you this. In the actual event, because here's something else pastors probably don't do. How much of it are you evaluating as you're doing it? And how much of it you have to make yourself say, I can't think about evaluation. I need to be in the moment now at the event.
I think everybody has to manage that balance, because you do have to, it's kind of like a coach. You're going to have to evaluate the game mid-game. You just have to. Now, I don't want my fans having to do that.
No.
And to some degree, I don't even really want the players outside, maybe the quarterback, doing that, because I need them to just execute what they're called to do. But
one play at a time.
But as the leader, there has to be some element of being present in both ways. Present in seeing what's happening, not from memory, but from in the moment. Is this person doing that job well, or do I need to find somebody else next year? There are some things that you have to, while your eyes are on it,
right,
you do have to take some mental notes on, while also not just being the strategist, but also being the pastor in the moment and enjoying it or experiencing it with the people. But that is a balance.
Yes.
That is a balance. But you need both ends of it, and not just be over here with the critique and clipboard, but also be over here with the availability and the connection and the experience of what God's doing. And, it's a balance of both for me.
Yeah, for sure. Same here. We just finished our blocktober event, and I was I made it a point to staff it as best I could, because what I did not want to do was be stuck in one place the whole night.
Right.
Because somebody didn't show up. There's a hole there. Pastor David's got to fill it. I tried my best to at least have enough of a bench that I could plug a gap if I needed to, because I wanted myself, as well as one of our lead teamers who was with me. She happens to be in this room right now. What's up? And I wanted us to be free to go throughout the event as much as I can to take these mental notes, but also I want to engage with the people I could engage with. But my primary focus of the night of the event was making sure my team's okay. Making sure, is anybody stressed? Is anybody tired? Because there are people that they will plow through all 3 hours and say, I don't need a break, I'm all good. And then by the 30-minute mark before it's all over, they hate you. and you just want to make sure you're like, okay, please take the break. I need you to take the break. As long as you have to literally tell your volunteers, go take a break. Go get a breather. And I was constantly trying to help evaluate.
Unless you're at the level where you have a manager for the thing,
right?
Then you have to do that. You have to manage. You have to manage your team, because, as you said, they won't always manage themselves well.
Right. Yeah. Because again, we've bought in. We're here. We're excited about it. We want to make our pastor proud. We want to uphold the vision he's set forth for this. I'm good. And sometimes you need to walk over and take them by hand and go, I know you think you're good, but I've been watching you for about an hour now. You need to go get a drink, or you need to just go take 5 minutes and just breathe for a second. You need to.
Now, I'm going to mention something.
Go ahead.
And I did bring up a thing that I would recommend. Work towards, at your large events, having someone that either coordinates or manages for you as the pastor, because I know at Multiply Conference, I have coordinators for that,
right?
To where I really can focus on the spiritual and the relational, and that's it.
Yes, sir.
And until we debrief, there's problems that happen that I never knew about, and I didn't. It was great that I didn't have to. It's not that I didn't want to be willing to, help, but if you are sometimes gifted with people who have that capacity, think about at your large events having a manager or a coordinator to loose you up, to focus on the spiritual and the relational, which is what a pastor is supposed to be doing, and let somebody who has a managerial gift do the managing if you can get there. But you're going to work towards that, obviously. That's just my 2 cents of advice there.
No, 100%. My step towards that this year was I had quadrant managers. I divided my event up into like 5 things, and I put one person over all 5. And so basically I was checking in with them and just observing the people as I went. My goal, if we do the event we did this year, next year, my goal is to have somebody do what I did, so I can step back and just pastor the event, which is what I really want to do. But now, sir, you've walked through it. You've made mental notes. When you get a chance, what I do is I try to get a moment, if I can't take my phone out, jot it in my notepad, things I'm seeing or things I'm noticing. Now it's time to debrief. How long after an event is over do you give breathing time to process, think about it before you actually meet with the key people you want to meet with and talk about it?
I have something that might be counterintuitive about when you want to position your evaluation or your debrief from an event. I think you need to give it a little time to breathe. And the reason I do is because if you immediately, now what you're going to instinctively want to say is, we got to do this as quick as possible so that we don't forget the things we want to mention. And there's an intelligence to that. However, I would encourage everybody that's going to be involved, just take notes and put down the things you don't want to forget.
Right.
Because here's what you want to do. You want to distance yourself from emotions and frustration.
Yes, sir.
So that when you come back around and you actually spend the time and the moment and the energy to get everybody in the room to talk about it, you don't want them having to work through the trauma of the horrible thing that happened in their area and they still feel bad about it. And they need to be past that. Or 2 people on the team got crossways during that event. You need some time for that to melt away, and you can and so that you're talking without emotion about the things that happen. So I would give it, I know that for some this sounds like, well, we need to do it Monday morning. I give it a couple of weeks. Give it a couple of weeks to marinate. And as you go, as you said, put your notes down so that you don't forget the key things, but let the emotion evaporate. and put on some objective glasses. Because I'm going to tell you, emotion could be negative. Emotion could also be positive. You could walk away from a thing, and because of certain elements of it, you could be like, rah, rah, rah. And if you do the evaluation tomorrow, it's going to be, man, this was the best thing we've ever done. Where if you sleep on it a few nights, you might be able to see the real holes in it.
Right.
Because if you have an event and 150 salvations, and you talk about it the next day, that's all anybody's going to want to talk about. And rightfully so.
Right.
But what if there are ways that you need to also focus on that could have used improvement? But it's going to be hard to focus on that when you had such an enormous win with the deal. Right. So give it a little time so that you can debunk the emotions and get to a place where we're talking about what actually happened in a rational way, and we're not too soon, kind of a thing with it. Anyway, I feel like you need to give it some breathing room and not walk into it too soon. I want to talk you through my 3 thoughts on doing the evaluation, the debrief, and these are the things that I would encourage you to think through. First of all, when you walk through your evaluation or your debrief, you're going to identify your purpose. Why are we doing it? We're doing it because Pastor Matt said it was a good idea. I mean, I can't imagine anybody actually doing that, but
top of the list, sir.
But your purpose is this, in my estimation. You're going to celebrate and you're going to grow. That's what you want to do. You want to celebrate and you want to grow from it. You want to celebrate because putting people together who were actually there and involved is going to give you the comprehensive opportunity to hear all the different components of the wins that each individual might not have been aware of if we didn't get together and talk about it.
Right.
In fact, invariably at events, there are the things everybody knows about that happen, but there's the one-on-one time that somebody had that everybody wouldn't know about. So it is important to take a moment and not just make it about strategic debunking of all the problems, but also to strategically celebrate because they're going to be things that everybody didn't know about.
Right.
And that gives you an opportunity. It also gives people an opportunity to highlight their own involvement, their own ministry, and to see themselves as valuable, and everybody to celebrate them a little bit. That's important. And in that, sometimes when you celebrate the things that happened, you realize why God actually wanted you to do the thing.
So good, sir.
You had your ideas of why you thought we were doing this. And then the end of it was, man, those things were good. Because I've had this. Events we did that we thought were for people or we thought were for a specific cause. But at the end of it, we realized, man, that was good. But the wins show us that what it did for our people was even better.
Yeah.
There will be things that happen that you didn't expect. And if you'll talk about the things to celebrate, you may find that there was an even greater purpose or a different purpose than you realized for doing the thing. And so that's why it's good to walk through those things and let everybody talk. Let everybody talk about the huge thing and the small thing. It doesn't matter how small it is. Win's a win. And so you're going to celebrate the things and you're going to grow by learning. Now, I'm going to talk about exactly what we're learning, but that's the point. We're not criticizing. We're not being cynical. We're learning. That's what every piece of information is it is learning. It is not negative. It is information that will support us growing. That is the point. That is why you're there, and that's what you're there to extract. Okay. So then, the second thing you're going to be thinking about as you create this space for evaluation is the people. So I have some advice on that. Not too many people, but not too few. Well, that narrows it down, Pastor. That's great advice. But I want you to think on both ends. If you get too many people in the room, it's going to become the chaos you're afraid it's going to be. Because what if everybody does speak up and there's not time for it and it's just a bunch of noise? If you have too few, then you're not going to end up with the information you need. You're going to end up with gaps on things that you need. So the people in the room, it needs to be managed, and you want enough to get information. You don't want too many until you have noise. And here's who you want in the room. You want the people who led anything in regards to the event. If they led, they have to be there.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have the people who were, maybe they weren't a leader, but they were tremendously invested.
Right.
Like they spent the most hours there, or they were involved in 5 different areas of it, or they were involved in it the whole time we've been preparing. Like the people with the biggest investments need to be there.
Yes, sir.
Because probably they have a perspective that you need. And so I would always go with your leaders and those who are greatly invested. And there's people who aren't going to be in leadership and maybe didn't give the most money or give the most prayer, work the most time, but they're key people in this. They will talk.
Mm.
Don't bring people to this meeting that you already know we can't pry anything out of them. Hey, I love them. Great personality type. That happens to be mine. But in this meeting, we got to have people that are going to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
People that you can get to say what they need to say. Look for those kinds of people who are going to be willing. I'm not just talking about the opinionated or the loudmouth jerk, but I'm talking about the person who is not intimidated to speak up.
Right.
You got to have that, or you're not going to get the feedback you really need. The other thing that you're going to look for is you need idea people. Who are people who are quick problem solvers, or who always come with a litany of responses? If a problem comes up, they're like, well, we could do this or we could do that. Those kind of idea people, you want them in the room. Mm-hmm. Even if maybe they weren't the most invested, but they were there, but they're great with ideas. Then when you get to the moment in a minute in the process, when you're talking about challenges that were faced, they might have answers that can come out because they're just idea people. I used to have a staff member that I was always comfortable when that staff member was beside me in any meeting at any time. I might even take him to my own personal stuff just because ideas flowed from him quickly. And it's like, if you're present, options are going to be created by your thinking. Mm-hmm. So you want those people around as well who are going to help you out. And once you have the people in place and you know the purpose of why you're there, then you're going to walk through the process. And first part of the process is this: when you sit down with the people you're meeting with, first thing, put a time limit on it. Mm-hmm. I'm not great with time limits because we have staff meetings that go decent amount of times to staff meetings that go extremely long. We have services that go reasonable amount of time, services that go extremely long. Prayer that goes reasonable amount of time or extremely long. I'm not great with time limits. However, I am a believer in time limits on debriefs, because if you don't, just the knowledge that we are on a clock helps keep us on task.
Yes, sir. Because
what you don't want to do is go into the weeds of every discussion that could be had. Because if you have a big event like we have Night to Shine, you can have 1,000 conversations about all the areas, and this happened and that could have been better. You could go a million directions. You've got to have something that narrows it down.
Right.
And you don't want to be the bad guy that's like, you know what, I know everybody's talking, but we got to go now. Know from the beginning, we're shooting at this being an hour-long meeting. Mm-hmm. And then everybody knows that we've got to kind of calibrate comments to that. And then when you say, hey, we got to get back on track, everybody knows, yeah, that's right, because we got to be out here now. I would put a time limit on it, whatever that time limit is, just so it keeps everybody on track and succinct. Second, you're going to have somebody taking notes in a way that everybody can see, whether it's a whiteboard or whatever. Because you want to make sure that you're getting in real time the things out there, and you want it not just somebody with taking minutes that nobody can see. You need it up there so that, because somebody said, no, that's not what I said. I said this, and you get it corrected. And then at the end of that, what's going to happen is everybody involved is going to be able to take out a phone, take a picture of it, take it away. Then they can think on that later. Even before you start your process planning for the next time. Everybody's got it then. So you're going to want to take public notes on that. You're going to start with your celebrations. You're going to invite everybody to contribute at least a win. And you might want to say, I'm going to, in your mind, I'm going to make this, I'm going to keep this to 15 minutes or whatever it is. You as the leader, kind of calibrate that. But you want to give everybody a chance to jump in with something that was, like I said earlier, either big or small. But hey, this is something great that happened at this, and they can celebrate the people that you were trying to reach or the target you were trying to, or they could celebrate something that was off the radar, like, hey, you know what? Our building really works well for this kind of event. Or, I'm really glad that we got, it was a summer event and it was really brilliant of us to get the mosquito spray people to come a week before, whatever's a win. Let people add to that.
Yes, sir.
And then you're going to transition and you're going to move into, it's time now, we've celebrated, it's time to grow. So how we're going to grow is we're going to take relevant information. We're not interested in criticisms. We're not interested in you telling how that area screwed it up. You're not going to allow any of that. You don't need poison in your meetings. But we want the information that's going to help us grow. That's the way you want to frame it to people. We want the information to help us grow, not tell us everything that stunk. Okay, that's not the way to frame that.
Right.
Tell us what we need to know to grow, to do better. And then you're going to divide to take that in bite-sized pieces. And this is going to be, let's face it, it's going to be the problems. You're going to be talking through the problems that you need to solve.
And don't be afraid to talk about them.
No, you got to talk about them. But you're going to want to do it in some sort of organized manner, or you'll have chaos.
Right.
Don't open the floor. Don't do that when you get to this area. Celebration, yes. This is not open the floor and just everybody jump in. You're going to walk through it in some sort of systematic way, the areas to grow. Whether you say, okay, there were 5 areas of oversight, or there were 5 areas to this event, we're going to speak about, all right, we're going to talk about area number 1 this year. If you want to divide it up by area, that's fine. If you want to, maybe you had a fall festival and you had 16 games, whatever. All right, let's walk through every game. But you're going to want to divide it up in an orderly way. Another way to do it is if it's an event that had like a progression to it,
right,
then you might just want to walk through it,
right, from the perspective of the attender, how they walk through it,
from the time stamping of, okay, from the time we got ready to walk in the door, this is what that looked like, and then take the journey with it. And night to shine, we might do that way, from what it looks like when they pull up on the parking lot, and the way the hospitality is, and the way they walk in the front door on the red carpet, and all, and then take it as the person experienced it. But you're going to want to walk through identifying the ways to grow through some sort of orderly way that you choose. You're the leader. You choose what makes sense to your mind. And then you're going to let people throw out there, hey, we encountered a challenge with this. This was our problem. And then you need to ask the follow-up questions. Be careful about the crew speaking to each other. You ask the follow-up, because what we don't want to get into is poison.
No.
Everybody's going to walk away from it thinking, man, that was a great meeting. I love these. That's how they need to feel about it. So be careful about them having to speak to each other. Isn't that what we did? Did we do that right? How was that? Be careful with that. Step in and you guide the follow-up questions and use your nose. When you sniff, when somebody brings up, hey, we had a challenge with this, like, be aware and say, okay, was it because? Would this have been better if? How could you follow up and you keep some control?
Right.
Because unless you have a really room full of extremely mature people, self-policing is not going to be well, and you're going to be out here in the weeds real quick. You need to keep the follow-up under control towards what's productive and what is going to keep people at peace with each other and not in criticism of each other.
Yes, sir.
You're going to be very careful with that. Meanwhile, all of the suggestions are being written, and in real time, you want the idea people in the room. You want to turn around and say, we had a log jam at this area when people were moving from this part of the event to that part of the event, and there was a real problem, with people moving about the building in this area. Okay, you've identified it. Okay, don't harp on it. Well, 15 people got stepped on, and then this lady was griping, and her mama was mad. You know the problem. You don't have to go over it 50 times and condemn everybody. We know, okay, there was a log jam here. Now, as you as the leader, you're going to say, you're transitioning. You're going to ask, okay, what can be done? Anybody have some thoughts on how that could work differently? And then you start taking the ideas that start coming. And, and maybe it's not the time to work through, we're definitely going to do this. I try to avoid that, like where we're planning now the next year.
Right.
But you may get the great 3 ideas of ways to solve this problem, to where that when you start planning next time, you got this in the hopper, you're ready to go with, there's 3 solutions we could have to this problem. Let's try this, this, or this. That may be enough. You may not want to go into planning your next year during your debrief, and I encourage you not to. But you want enough ammunition so that when you get ready next time, you know where you're going with your solutions, and you've got to have those recorded. And you're going to save all of that, and then you're going to intentionally have all that information ready to implement in your planning for next time.
Mm-hmm. I love it, sir. A couple of questions that came to my mind as you were talking, and one of them is, when it comes to this, especially, it's one thing, sir, if you're running a meeting as the pastor that was oversaw and coordinated by one of your staff people. So, like, for instance, if we debriefed Night to Shine, you had a lot of the oversight with that, but you weren't boots on the ground in every single element of it.
Right.
So for you to run the meeting is actually healthy because, for instance, if we do debrief blocktober, if I ran the meeting, there's a very good chance somebody might say something and the enemy could slip in and go, that was a big deal to you. That was a baby to you. And now you're hearing all the negative of it. And that can start messing with your head. You missed God. You weren't supposed to do this. You wasted their time. And then before the meeting's even halfway over, you're already discouraged and angry with yourself or angry with the person who's saying these things. And so how, sir, do you believe it's healthy? Or is it just one of those things where, hey, you're the pastor, you got to do this? What would you always run this meeting, even if it wasn't your event or if it was your event? Like, what's the healthy thing to do?
Yeah, I wouldn't always. In fact, it just depends on what how I evaluate my role in the whole event. Like, do I know enough to run the meeting? Like if, for instance, there could be elements coming up in the next year or two of Multiply where I might be hands off enough that I might need somebody that has more grip on the way it was all executed to walk everybody through it. Do I have enough grip? Or like you said, am I too emotionally invested?
Correct.
Do I need somebody more objective?
Yes, sir.
That doesn't have those hindrances.
Right.
I would take both of those into account.
Absolutely. And then the other question I really want to ask you, sir, is as you get to the end of an event, whatever you learn in the debrief and the evaluation process, of course, you can use that and apply it to anything you do in the future.
Yes.
Because probably in some way, shape, or form, unless God transforms your campus or transforms your people, a lot of this stuff is going to be seen again.
Yes, so you're going to learn. Absolutely. You're learning more about you than just this one event.
Correct.
Yeah.
So then when you look at an event, sir, when it comes to, okay, let's take Night to Shine. We did it. And there was a moment in the evaluation of it where you're like, this could be every year.
Yeah.
Or you look at an event and go, for this year, for this season, we needed to do that. I don't see us ever doing this again. How do you judge that in your mind, sir?
I think you'll just know, and as the leader, I think you'll instinctively know. And one of the reasons that is good to have a debrief is you may know that we don't ever need to do this again. But what about the people that thought it was just amazing? If you have the debrief and you talk through it, at least your leaders are probably, by the end of the debrief, they're probably going to understand why we don't need to do this again. Whereas if you just say, we're not going to do that again.
Right.
It might, it might be hard to hear. But if you've walked through that evaluation process, you might not have to convince anybody of that. Or on the other hand, you might not have, it might not be hard. After we did Night to Shine, the first time, it wasn't hard. Like, people understood when especially when you sit there and say, well, this is what all happened.
Right.
This was the number of salvations. This was the way our people got involved with people they're normally not comfortable with, and yet they stepped up in faith. And once you start talking through it, it becomes apparent. And instead of you having to recast the vision for it, people already buy into, oh yeah, this is definitely something we should do again. And they know why. Not just they came away with a good feeling. It's like, oh, this is great. But if you've debriefed it, they can say, no, these are the 3 reasons that I know.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have to go back to the congregation and say, hey, we're going to do this, now you've got a whole group of people on your side
Yes,
that
sir.
already can say, hey, what Pastor's saying is right. We were there. We know this was great. We got to do this again.
Yep. And it's funny, like 2, 3, 4 months, 6 months later, the questions start surfacing. Are we going to start planning for it yet? Are we going to start doing it yet? They're chomping at the bit. They can't wait to do it. We've had Night to Shine conversations come up in September.
Oh yeah.
You know, people are already waiting, you know, when's it going to happen? And so, yeah, I'm an event driven person. I love events. I love the story of it. I was talking to one of our workers, and I was saying the story of how an event takes place from the inception process to the beginning of it, to the end of it, to the evaluation. What was the story of it? What was the journey of it? As the pastor, what was my part in it? What was the leader's part in it? Because then when you sit back and do what we're doing now, when you're talking to a pastor about planning out their event, you have a story. You have a process of these were the climaxes, these were the dark points, these were the bright points. And then at the end of it, here's what I learned from it. The moral of the story is do this every year or never do this again. Right. Or if you do it this way and not this way. But to be able to sit back and not just look at it as a list of bullet points and a do's and don'ts list, but to see the organic flow of what God did and let it be a true testimony of whether it would accomplish everything you thought it would, or it morphed and became something that only God knew it would become and you had no clue it was going to become that, but it did. Yeah. I just love that. I love that process of it, sir. Is there anything lingering when it comes to things like this that you would think would be a helpful thing for our people to know?
Yeah, I just I think that you need to understand that part of your team feeling invested is going to be not just that they were in on the planning, which I hope they are, but they're in on the evaluation. Mm-hmm. Because especially if they were in on the planning and the execution, they need to get to be part of the evaluation, and they need to feel like that their perspective is important, because really it is. It doesn't mean everybody sees things correctly, but it does mean that they were greatly invested and they need to be greatly heard. And when you give them that opportunity, they are even more bought into you, your leadership, and themselves, and them taking themselves seriously, because they know that they get consulted about how to look at the things that they've been involved in. I just feel like it's super encouraging for your team when they're involved in the evaluation process.
I agree, sir. The only thing that even slightly came up in my spirit in the final closing moments of this is I have to ask myself, as a pastor, do I want to be remembered as the pastor of the church that kept doing this thing every year, or do I want to be remembered as the pastor of a church who grew and discipled his people, who cared about his community, loved his community? I think so many times some pastors may grab onto something that's really cool. It's branded. They've identified it. They latch onto it. This is me. Every year we're doing this. And then you look back on it and go, did it really? Is this the thing I want to be remembered for? And I think one of the hardest things that I've had to learn, sir, is sometimes even if you do something year upon year, there comes a point where you might need to pray and get in your closet, and God may say, you did faithful with it, son, but now I needed to die.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you have to answer the question, is the event the vision, or is the event part of the vision?
Yes, sir.
Is it the thing you're aiming at, or is it help you get to the thing that God has you aiming at? Mm-hmm. That's when it's in the right spot. And there have been things that we had to discontinue after a couple of not very great COVID year experiences with a major event that we used to do called Gear Up. It was just time. It was obvious the season of it was over. We had served literally thousands of people, and it had been a great piece of us building our outreach and building the awareness of our church and our community, even building our people's capacity to relate to and work with different kinds of people.
Yeah.
But it was building us to something else.
Yes, sir.
It wasn't the end goal in itself. And I had to be willing to let it die. And even though I knew this is the most people we have on campus for an event, and I'm going to be saying we're not going to do this anymore, is that really okay? And I had to let it die because it was part of our part of our journey. It was an important part of our journey. It did important things, but it wasn't the journey. And so that's an important question to ask yourself.
Mhm.
Is this the vision, or is it just part of the vision?
Yeah, because even in the midst of a death of something, God can bring life to something.
Sure, and he probably wants to bring life to
Yes.
something else. If you'll let this die, because since seasons change, yes.
Yes, sir. That's all I have. Is there anything else you want to say, sir?
Yeah, no, I just encourage everybody to be wise when you're filling your calendar, and be wise in the planning and in the evaluation. And you'll actually find out that real evaluation debriefing meetings can be very joyous,
Yes.
very encouraging, and can spark a whole lot of creativity and be great for your team.
All right, sir. Let's close out this episode the way we do all of them. Let's end in prayer, sir.
Father, I thank you for those who are listening today. I thank you for their ministries, their lives. And I pray, God, that you would give them clarity about every event, every part of their vision, what is to be included in that. And I pray, God, that you would just raise up under them teams of people who can support and give life to that vision. And I pray that you would develop in them the processes, Lord, that are necessary to both plan and evaluate these things that you bring into the lives of their ministry, so that they can continue to be healthier and healthier in Jesus' name. Amen.